identity, self-expression, the underground, counterculture, and punk. What do these terms mean? What is a counterculture exactly? And what's a punk? When you hear the term punk, what comes to mind? Thugs, violence, maybe a mosh pit, or something else. Let's explore these terms and see why some are deemed socially deviant in punk and social deviance. The term punk dates to the 16th century and has almost always been a term or label to describe criminal or unwanted behavior in people. That is, till it was being used to describe a new music genre popping up in the early 1970s, with bands like the Ramones in the US and the Sex Pistols in the UK. These bands started in the basements and hangouts and transformed with their loyal fan bases, taking the punk scene as a music genre and turning it into a full-fledged counterculture. But what is a counterculture? A counterculture is a culture with values that run counter to those of mainstream society, and social deviance being a violation of social norms. But what is punk, and how is it deviant?
Punk is about music. It's also about fashion. It's also about politics. It's a whole community.
When I think of punk, probably just like my early exposure to DIY culture in general.
We can use it to describe people, I guess. Like, we were just walking and I was like, oh, look, there's a punk. I was like, look at the way he's dressed, look at his boots. So it's something I feel like you can describe. Like, you can describe people as punk to, like, your friends, I guess. But mainly, I use it to describe music.
I think of like rebellion or
It's mostly to music, but it kind of sucks that the term music. It's used as like a cultural aesthetic term for people, but it's not accurate all the time because people are always going to be people and not conform to like specific observation.
Starting as a form of musical expression and a response to the perceived commercialization and glitz and glam of rock of the era, punk has transcended being just music and has become a way of life for so many around the world today. Punk's harsh, edgy sound has also become more recognizable over the past 50 years, but with it also came the fashion that was associated with the scene. Rooted in the DIY attitudes of the 1960s and 70s, the rough and tough image often sport leather or denim jackets, blue jeans, boots, and unique hairstyles, all of which became physical and artistic symbols against the establishment, status quo, and major corporations. Growing and changing, this look is not typical among all punks, but has become synonymous with the perception of punk identity. Some within the scene, such as Bloomington Indiana hardcore band W.A.D, prefer a cleaner look. It seems that punk is better understood within their attitudes and morals, rather than in their appearances. Within the diverse landscape of punk, you have individuals who some would call far-right, leftist, anarchist, marginalized, or somewhere in between. But something that all these groups share is a DIY attitude. DIY, standing for do-it-yourself, is in relation to punk something that is fundamentally made by fans for fans. And this attitude is applied to often the music itself, booking shows, touring, and other aspects as well.
I think punk, like as a broad term, a lot of people just think of it as the sonic side of it, so like the music. Which obviously that's like the main vehicle by which like messages and stuff are given to people. But I think the DIY ethics around punk are what actually makes it punk, because there are plenty of political artists who I wouldn't consider punk, like Neil Young has political commentary in his music. I think just like the idea that bands and the people sharing the messages are on the same level as the people, because they are just doing it themselves. They are on the, it's more of a community thing. Punk is not about like, oh, we're going to see this band and this band's playing on a stage. It's more about, oh, we're in this community. These community members do this band, these community members do this thing, and it's all part of this thing. We're all doing it ourselves together. So I think it's the DIY aspect that makes it punk. Because think of like the biggest punk bands, like Green Day or something, like, punk adjacent bands. They all started as just like a community, and having that equal platform with the audience, because they are the audience and they are the community. So I think the DIY aspect is what makes it punk.
This DIY mentality originated from a combination of reasons, but was partially due to many labels and venues refusing business and bookings with early punk groups. So as a means of sustainability, the DIY ethics were put in place, creating an emphasis on networks, relationships, and community. Understanding DIY ethics and their role in the punk community provides an insight into the sound, concert experience, fashion, and political attributes of the band. But it begs the question, do they see themselves as deviant, and would they call themselves punk?
Like, I think people tend to try to use it as like a negative thing, obviously, of like, oh, those like deviants, they're, you know, like breaking things or whatever, vandalizing. But like, I think there's power and there's like importance in being like socially deviant, because there's like, you know, like you don't get anything done. Like being, you know, like deviant in that, like, you know, being outside of the mainstream is like, I think, a good thing, and I think like the main way to, you know, affect social change.
I don't know. I've never gone out of my way to be socially deviant. The way I look, the kind of music I like, it's just kind of natural. I'm not one thing. I prefer not to label myself. Like, you could call me a punk, and I'd probably be like, oh, I'm not a punk. But I think labels are for other people to give you, if you agree or not.
I don't know, yeah. I guess I do things, but I don't do them because I think I'm a punk. I think it really comes down to doing what I want to do, and not like what other people want to do. But I wouldn't call myself that, but I wouldn't care if someone called me.
I think there are parts of punk that could be considered deviant, but I wouldn't say it's fair to just generally call something deviant because deviant has a negative connotation. And I would say myself and most people that I know who are a part of punk or hardcore specifically, like, it's only positively impacted us.
Answers like these are pretty typical of the punk community, which is made up of a diverse group of individuals. And this community would find that due to the deviant labels and their punk ideals, the mainstream society would come up with many misconceptions about the scene.
One of the more misunderstood things is that the violence is the main part of it, or that every scene is violent. The dancing is violent at shows. You know, like, to people on the outside, they think, oh, the music's really aggressive, it's really angry, so it can't be positive in any way, and it can't build up a community in any way. And I guess that would probably be what I would say about punk in general, is that people see the aesthetics and they see the parts of it that get sensationalized, like drug use or violence, and they say there's no way that community in general could build up the people within it or anything. But, you know, they'll never talk about the ideas of, you know, like an egalitarian social structure, or like the way that the bands are no more important or higher than the audience, or their, you know, mutual aid between peoples in the community.
I think, honestly, the main thing is that people think that punks are like assholes, basically. Like there's a misunderstanding that because punks tend to like look kind of aggressive and listen to aggressive music and like be, you know, revolutionary, like that we, you know, hate people, or that we want to like only destroy things without like making positive change. And that's just like really not true of like most people within the community.
I think definitely the way you dress. Like Michael, he's not dressed like anything. Probably like attitude, I guess. Like, you don't have to be some snotty asshole.
I'd say generally most punks are very kind, especially like in the Bloomington scene. There's a really good community of good people.
A counterculture made up of diverse and often marginalized individuals, striving for authenticity, identity, community, and self-reliance. The punk scene has grown and developed into an even more complex and eclectic collection. Identified by its harsh, bold sound, its often unique attire, and DIY attitude, the punk counterculture has moshed its way into our lives, local and abroad. Bands like Turnstile, Knocked Loose, and Idols are bringing the genre to headlining festivals like Coachella and Lollapalooza. And since the 1970s, punk has proven itself to be more than just an angsty artistic expression of the past for violent people, but actually a strong and welcoming community for now and the future.